if it's not a Cold War, different alignments and are working right now. So are we heading towards a bipolar world order or a multipolar world order? And my question is coming, the reason why, because if you look at theory, IR theory, multipolarity is not supposed to be stable.
पाकिस्तान के पीछे एक बूगीमैन स्लैश बूगी वुमन है. वो कौन है वो चेहरा अभी धीरे धीरे सामने आ गया है. And that has been channeled. Now the funny thing is that Pakistan-based terrorists also attack Chinese liberals. It's been happening since 2004.
The Balochistan area you're talking about? The general understanding is it was India which insisted that Quad should not be military, it should not be a security alliance, and that's why AUKUS comes into picture. And a lot of Indian media and a lot of Indian academics said that India is missing the bus because of it.
It's not like that the Russians don't have a problem with the Chinese. If you look historically also, there was a point of time when the USSR was considering dropping the nuclear bomb on China.
हेलो एंड नमस्ते, मेरा नाम है डॉक्टर दीपान्विता और आपका स्वागत है जियोपॉलिटिकल डायलॉग्स पे। आज हमारे साथ है डॉक्टर सुपर्णा पाठक, जो कि एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर है ओपी जिंदल यूनिवर्सिटी में। वो खुद मैंडरिन जानती है और चाइना की एक्सपर्ट है, तो आज हम चाइना को लेके बात करने वाले हैं। वैसे तो उन्होंने कई किताबें लिखी हैं, और रिसेंट वन इज ऑन ड्रिफ्ट्स एंड डायनामिक्स, जो कि रशिया के यूक्रेन वॉर पे है, एंड जो नई किताब आ रही है वो क्वाड पे है। तो आप एक्सपेक्ट कर ही सकते हो कि इस पूरे पॉडकास्ट में हम चाइना स्पेसिफिक बातें करेंगे, इंडिया चाइना बात करेंगे, चाइना यूएस बात करेंगे, एंड ऑफ कोर्स चाइना क्या अगला हेजेमॉन बनेगा उस पर भी हम चर्चा करेंगे। स्टार्ट करते हैं इस पॉडकास्ट को। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, वेलकम टू द पॉडकास्ट डॉक्टर सुपर्णा, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस। तो मेरा जो पहला क्वेश्चन है, क्या हम एक कोल्ड वॉर में हैं? आर वी इन अ कोल्ड वॉर?
Okay, first of all, तो thank you for having me here. कोल्ड वॉर ये वैसा वाला, अगर कोल्ड वॉर होता भी है, ये कोल्ड वॉर वैसा वाला पहला वाला जैसा नहीं होगा. इट्स गोइंग टू बी अ कोल्ड वॉर 2.2 अगर होता भी है. अगेन देयर आर मल्टीपल थिंग्स विच आर वेरी डिफरेंट इन दिस इपॉक ऑफ हिस्ट्री. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, जस्ट दो सुपर पावर नहीं है. देयर आर इट्स अ मल्टीलैटरल सिस्टम बिकॉज देयर इज इंडिया, देयर इज जापान, बहुत सारे ऐसे देश हैं. तो वो बाइपोलैरिटी तो है ही, इट्स अ मोर मल्टीपोलर वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर. बट दैट डजंट मीन कि कॉम्पिटिशन नहीं है चाइना और यूएस के बीच में. वो है बिल्कुल, बट अगर चाइना एंड यूएस है तो रशिया भी तो है, बिकॉज द वॉर इज स्टिल ऑन, राइट? तो इट इज़ वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू एनविसाज इट इन द टर्म्स ऑफ अ कोल्ड वॉर, बिकॉज हम जैसा सोचते हैं कोल्ड वॉर जैसा था, ये तो वैसा कुछ है ही नहीं. डेफिनेटली देयर इज सम सॉर्ट ऑफ वॉर हैपनिंग. हॉट वॉर भी हो रहा है, कोल्ड वॉर भी हो रहा है, आइडियोलॉजिकल डिफरेंसेस भी है, आइडियोलॉजिकल अलाइनमेंट्स भी है. सो इट्स अ completely different sort of arena or a international system that we are heading into.
If it's not a Cold War, different alignments and are working right now. So are we heading towards a bipolar world order or a multipolar world order? And my question is coming, the reason why, because if you look at theory, IR theory, multipolarity is not supposed to be stable. Balance of power will be very difficult out here. So where are we heading towards then?
In a very unstable, multipolar world order. Because as you said, IR theory says that, that type bipolarity is not there. Which means that, it's not an either or sort of camp. Which means countries seek to align based on interests. It's more on interest based. Ideology is roughly out of the window, even though the West, the Anglo-Saxon world keeps talking about values and democracy and all that. But the fact is, democracies are also of different types, first and foremost. Secondly, even an autocratic country like China says that it's a democracy that works. So, it's a wipeout of all of the previous theories that worked out so far. So it's a multipolar world order, and the way India says, multi-alignment. That, I think, is the most apt description for the world order we are in. Countries, align based on interests.
Okay. So what is the alignment that we have with China then? India, China, I'm coming to. Too many, again, if you look at the world of influencers, after Pakistan, China is the next so-called villain in our geopolitics. But is there any alignment then? Are we seeing any kind of interest-based alignment?
There could have been lots of interest-based alignments, which is why, in the realm of climate, China often piggybacks on India's back and, says that, there should be a cutoff and there should be historic responsibility and so on. But look, China is not the new enemy. It has always been there. even before independence, it has always been there. So it's not something new. And पहले पाकिस्तान को माना जाता था, बट पाकिस्तान के पीछे एक बुगी मैन स्लैश बुगी वुमन है. वो कौन है, वो चेहरा भी धीरे धीरे सामने आ गया है. एंड दैट हैज बीन चाइल्ड. अगर हम तो सिर्फ आज की बात करते हैं, बट इवन इफ यू लुक 1962 हमारे बीच में था, इंडिया और चाइना के बीच में था. आप उसको लिमिटेड कॉन्फ्लिक्ट कह लीजिए, बॉर्डर वॉर कह लीजिए, जो कहना है कह लीजिए. बट इमीडिएटली आफ्टर 62, 63 में पाकिस्तान इतना खुश हो गया कि चाइना आया, यूनिलैटरली डिफीट कर लिया इंडिया को, एंड इट वेंट बैक यूनिलैटरली, कि ऑक्यूपाइड टेरिटरी से सक्सम वैली को निकाल के उसमें एज अ गिफ्ट चाइना को दे दिया. ये था बुगी मैन, बुगी वुमन, जिसको गिफ्ट मिल रहा था. राइट.
In return, what did they get when it comes to Shaksgam?
कुछ नहीं मिला, बस दुश्मन का दुश्मन.
Okay.
That's the only thing. And the hopes that China will help us. आज के डेट तक में तो चाइना उनका कुछ हेल्प तो कर पाया नहीं है. 70% of their debt is owed to China. But that being said, Pakistan is not a rational actor. It is based on this hope and vision that someday it's going to take over the entire territory of India, which is really illogical. As per IR theory also, it's illogical. Practicality is illogical. But इस idea को feed कौन कर रहा है पीछे से?
Right.
What does China get out of Pakistan? Nothing, right? It would rather be better if China would actually partner with India, because there are a lot of things to actually accomplish together. The West has been terrible historically to China, to India, to the global South. काफ़ी सारे areas हैं जो हम cover कर सकते थे. But then, here is where, I would say that personal cultures become a part of strategic cultures. Chinese में there's a saying, which means that one mountain cannot have two tigers. IR theory में ये है ना कि global hegemon बनने के लिए regional hegemony चाहिए first. US ने भी वही किया था. अब जो region है जिसमें चाइना है, वो कौन सा है? एशिया. वहाँ उसे regional hegemony चाहिए. But then there is this other country which has better credibility than China, except from within our neighbors, of course, direct immediate neighbors, but it has better credibility. It has all the economic potentials, is a true democracy, and there is a high possibility it will become the next China. It will be another tiger. So how can there be two tigers in one mountain? So what does China do? Keep India restricted to the neighborhood, particularly using Pakistan. First and foremost, Pakistan को use किया, because उसमें हमारा time, money, energy, planning, army men, army women, सब कुछ लगता है. And we could have used that for economic development. But वो है ही नहीं. That being said, China keeps showing, दिखाता कुछ है और करता कुछ और है. So it shows that, we are Asian civilizations, we have connects of Buddhism and so on. We can accomplish great things together, so we should partner up. But that partnership for India will be a subservient partnership. It wants another Pakistan out of India, a subservient partner. Are we willing to do that? हमें तो ये करना नहीं है. So which is why it's just now that we are slowly recognizing that this challenge has always been there. For whatever reasons we didn't recognize it. Maybe because our approach has been towards cooperation. वो चार चमाट मार के चल जाता है, हम फिर भी दूसरा गाल आगे कर लेते हैं.
But it's a continuous thing, right? हम हमेशा we start thinking positively about China, and then again that dhoka comes in. The same thing is, I can see the trend again happening. We are again going back to friendship and disengagement and things. Why and where do we stop, or should we stop at all? Or should we keep on trusting, have that faith in China?
I don't think it's time that we start calling a spade, right? India in this current epoch of history has been calling out even the West for its hypocrisy, for its duality.
But we don't do it with China.
Exactly. That's the question. Why don't we do it with China, right? Now, again, look, as you said, we've been attacked the maximum number of times in the world, militarily, by China. वो late 50s से शुरू हुआ, 62, 67, 1987, Doklam, Galwan, Yangtze Valley clash, and अभी भी our militaries are still holding their ground, right? So ये कभी खत्म नहीं होने वाला. We need to understand there is a pattern to it. अब China is engaging in something called smile diplomacy with India and Japan. क्यों? Because उसको market so good. We're the biggest market right now. Economic growth rates are the best in the world, So IMF, World Bank have all said that. So and China को उतना अच्छा नहीं है, because China's growth rates have come tumbling down. उनके economic planning model में गलती था पहले से. Now they're seeing the effects. How do they ensure that they still keep reaping economic benefits because only if they have economic growth can they translate that into military growth, which they will use to attack the US or Japan or whoever. India is not seen as a formidable enemy, but then India holds its ground. So it might just be it could be a hegemon someday. That is always a possibility. So why have the second tiger? Second, it is anyways, a Western style liberal democracy. So US camp, that's not acceptable to China. It wants a subservient player, which will basically kowtow to China. So it's engaging in smart diplomacy. अब मुझे ये नहीं पता कि why our collective memory is so short that we keep forgetting again and again and again. And then we start thinking that, oh, we should be friends, let's try the hand of friendship. But look, unfortunately, this entire international system is still very neo-realistic. It is still anarchic. Self-interest first. हम ये भूल जाते हैं. Every country out there thinks of its own national interest first. बाकी ये यारी दोस्ती चलता रहेगा. Diplomacy will do its thing. So which is why, we'll have to keep channels of engagement open. But the fact is, one should not forget what China has done. Coming to that, I think, under this current government that we have, that consciousness is there. Even if you look at his statement from January, he, said, and I quote him, right now the relationship is trying to disentangle itself from the post-2020 border situation. But even as that is being addressed, more long-term thought needs to be given to the evolution of our ties. India has to prepare for the evolution of China's expressions of its growing capabilities, particularly that impinge directly on our interests. There is that understanding. Yeah, chalo, diplomacy has to be there. So that diplomacy, that channel will be there. Now, even our military chief, he also stated in January, when the Indian Army Chief General Upendra Dwivedi, he said that the situation on the LSC is stable but sensitive. MEA backed up his statement, saying that yes, we are in line with what he has said. Situation is stable but sensitive. Then again, towards the end of just about a few weeks ago, Prime Minister Modi inaugurated a strategic Himalayan road tunnel, which pushes all-weather access northwards towards high-altitude border zones with China and Pakistan. And it's the highest tunnel, the Sonmarg tunnel, basically. This is preparation. So we will keep that. Look, China has been doing this to us, doing that smile diplomacy, keeping up that facade, while, stabbing us in the back over and over and over again. So maybe now the consciousness is there that we'll get stabbed again. So at least let's prepare. Other things will keep happening diplomatically.
But Suparna, out here, my question is, the stabbing was not going to happen via a military way. China also knows that India is preparing, right? These are not hidden, there are secrets. China has got better arsenal to use. For example, hydropolitics. Dam building that's happening, the way it is building dams, and which is becoming a matter of concern. It uses water sharing, the information that comes for the flow of water in the rivers. It sometimes in years like there were conflicts, it refused to give it to India. When it's good relation, it gives it to India. So it has been using this information as a war tactic. So at this point of time, if I look at, again, the stabbing part, it's not going to be a military stabbing. It's either going to be hydropolitics or via some other country or some other narrative. In that light, how do we manage these kind of non-traditional threats?
Non-traditional security. See, China has a strategy of bleeding by 1,000.
Yes.
So they will come back militarily as well. If you look at the pattern, every time that we've had a military conflict, the PLA moves back during the winters. Because the last true war experience which China had was actually with Vietnam, 1979. After that, it's not had a full-scale military conflict or war or etc. As compared to the Indian Army, which has had multiple fists in the extremely cold sub-zero temperatures in the Himalayas with Pakistan. Right? So, in the Himalayas or in extremes of weathers, the Indian Army is better prepared to tackle the threat. So, PLA is not prepared for that, which is why in the winters, when temperatures dip to the lowest, they pull back. It's a pattern. Every single time it has happened. So they pulled back again in October. It was assumed that it is coinciding with the BRICS Kazan summit and etc. Yeah, okay, that worked out because that's a facade again that, oh, we are trying for friendship, BRICS, Kazan summit, and so on. But it's a common pattern. It was October, winters, freezing temperatures. It pulls back, and every time that it attacks is either in the spring or would be in the summers. So they're going to come back. It's a pattern first. Otherwise, they'll continue incursions. They'll engage in psychological warfare. They will throw some, used noodle packets, Chinese noodle packets across the body, basically implying that we were there and so on. This territory as ours. Militarily also they'll do. But they'll also continue in all other realms. Economically, they will also do it. How and why? If you just see, because Foxconn shifted its base and it's done a good job as far as India's Apple iPhone production is concerned. China doesn't really like that, which is why what it has done is that it recalled the Chinese employees who were working in Foxconn in India. It's recalled them and is not allowing more Chinese employees to come and work in India or the Taiwanese Foxconn manufacturing enterprise. Now, Taiwan or Foxconn has said that it will replace those Chinese laborers with Taiwanese laborers, but that takes time. Even that small jolt can mean quite a dent in our now progressing economic growth rate story. That is also something that they're going to do. Economically, why do we always have trade imbalance with China?
Because they dump.
They dump. India takes them. India is the country which leads the list in dragging China to the WTO against for anti-dumping. We are there. US also doesn't do that. We do that. That is the amount of dumping we have first. Second, there are tariff and non-tariff barriers against Indian products in China. Look, even if this argument is made that, because of economies of scale or comparative advantage, India just sends in agricultural products, which is why it will not get that much of money in return. Fair enough. Let's go by that argument. Agricultural products. Basmati rice is India's patent. It is India's. Where does China buy basmati rice from? Not from India, but from Pakistan. This is a non-tariff barrier. How and why would you do that, right? Second, when we engage in discussions and we say that we would want to export these commodities to you, they would say that, look, in your agricultural commodities, there might be these pests. The funny thing is that those pests, at least, 70% of those pests are in China, not in India. Because differences in weather conditions, geographic conditions, it's a non-tariff barrier. There are anyways tariff barriers. Again, let's look at, our software, Wipro and all of these tech companies. Why are they not doing well in China? If we have a global advantage somewhere, why is it that only in China it's not working out, right? If we look at pharmaceuticals, because India is the generic drugs platform of the world, even in the most bureaucratic, democratic countries, the permissions for the drugs to, generic drugs to actually enter the markets is given in a maximum of 4 to 6 weeks. Beyond that, if you think of it, if you let the drugs languish at ports, they will simply expire, right? Double whammy for India. Cost of production also. And then we're not even able to sell it in the Chinese markets. During COVID-19, however, a lot of in the Chinese black market, there was a huge demand for Indian drugs. So that demand is there. Which just said the government is engaging in these sorts of barriers. So trade deficit will always remain. That is another cut. Military cut is one. Economic cut is one. Bleeding by 1,000 cuts. Water. As you said, despite the fact that we have agreements on sharing information on the volume of water flowing in the Brahmaputra and its upper reaches in the Yarlum Tsangpo in Tibet, whenever there's a conflict, China would refuse to give us that information. Which is why, when the Doklam clash was on, there were massive floods in Assam because we were not prepared for the humongous volume of water which would be flowing our way. China said weather monitoring systems in Tibet failed. Fair enough. It can fail. I understand there are extremes of temperatures in Tibet. But how is it that Bangladesh, which is also a lower riparian state, how is it that Bangladesh got the information? India did not. That is the third cut. There are n number of cuts, 1,000 cuts. Terrorism. A lot of secessionists terrorists from India's northeast actually get their arms supply from Yunnan, from China. Paresh Barwa of the Ulfa is still in Yunnan, right? In fact, when in 2020, he had actually put up a video saying that China is our brother and, as much people should be. That video has been taken off, thankfully. But another cut, every run, and then there is Pakistan, of course, state-sponsored terrorism. At the UN 1267 committee, it's just China shielding these terrorists from getting listed there, right? Saying that we are putting a technical hold. They never care to explain what's a technical hold. Honestly, if there is a problem, we might talk and discuss and find out what's the technical hold. Can we give you some more information, evidence? No explanation. It's the other democracies, France or US, which actually lobby and say that yes, these people have to be listed as terrorists. These are all Pakistani-based terrorists. Now the funny thing is that Pakistan-based terrorists also attack Chinese laborers. It's been happening since 2004.
The Balochistan area you're talking about? Yeah.
In 2024, there were 2 instances at least in which Chinese laborers or Chinese personnel were killed. Yet China shields Pakistan at the UN's 1267 committee. I think these are clear enough indications as to what China really wants from India. Look, we could have cooperated in a lot of things: climate change, energy negotiations, learning from each other what has worked, what has not worked out, urbanization. But how do we even go to all of that when it's an existential threat for us? I understand there are no permanent friends or foes in international relations. But China has proved itself to be a permanent foe. It's just that we want to, somehow put rosy tinted shades on our eyes and see it as a friend. But it's not been a friend. And it's high time we understand that, lest we lose more territory.
That's true. Let me come to psychological warfare now. Why or what is stopping India from denouncing One China policy? Our Member of Parliament, Shashi Tharoor, has constantly been saying that it's time that India says that we do not accept. So from 2011, if I'm not wrong, we have stopped mentioning it, but we have not vocalized that we have left it or, kind of rejected it. So why are we not doing that?
Primarily 2 reasons. Maybe I'll expand it to 3. 2 reasons. See, even the most powerful country of the international system
Has it?
US, which has much more military and economic power than China, has not. There has to be a reason for that, right? Now, if the most powerful country is not willing to take on another military conflict with China over Taiwan, how should India, which is already locked in a military conflict with China, try and make more ground for Chinese to come and, attack us, right? First is that. Second is the fact that, we have to understand the power differential. One China policy is great, right? But these were done by previous prime ministers or previous leaders, right? Now, we can't really do away with something that we have been following for years and years and years, right? Also looks bad for the country. More importantly, let's talk in terms of real politics. Taiwan also lays a claim to Arunachal Pradesh. Oh, because, see, earlier, before the liberation of China in 1950, it was just Republic of China, what we now know as Taiwan. There was just one China, which was Republic of China. But then there was the civil war between the Communist Party of China and the Kuomintang, the nationalists. And the nationalists had to flee from the PRC, from the mainland. They relocated to Taiwan, right? Okay, all of this happened and then Taiwan was created. But when there was one China, the Republic of China, there was a claim, right? Now, PRC continues those claims. Taiwan has not verbalized them for quite a few number of years. But the fact is that Taiwan also hopes one day that it will take over the mainland. Just the way China thinks that it will take over Taiwan, it will also take over the mainland. Okay, Taiwan is our friend. We have great camaraderie. We have, great things going on right now. But why should India, rationally speaking, why should India go headlong into another war with China for another country? How many times has Taiwan condemned China for attacking India? I think it's 0. Yeah. So look, it's a matter of reciprocity also, rationally speaking, right? And India is a rational state. India is a rational actor. We haven't, since 2008, in our official documents, we've not mentioned the one China policy. Look, our style of diplomacy is also very tacit. We don't say things very directly. We're not aggressive like the Chinese. We don't engage in word-for-word diplomacy. Nor are we like the Anglo-Saxons, right? Our style is also, sometimes it's silent. One needs to understand the signals. Year after year, before the Double 10 Day, which is October 10, Taiwan's National Day, China tells us that you will not wish Taiwan a very happy Independence Day or happy National Day and so on. Year after year after year, outside the Chinese embassy in Chanakyapuri in New Delhi, there are posters stuck by different politicians saying Happy Double 10 Day Taiwan, right? This is a tacit response to it, right? We are a democracy. We are free to do this. The government might have a policy, but civilians are different. And media also goes berserk wishing Taiwan. Over and above that, the de facto Taiwanese embassy here holds a celebration, right? Now, even earlier, China had given this diktat to the US that you will never fly your country's flag with Taiwan's flag. Because the moment you recognize a country as having a flag, oh, well, it's a country then, right? But year after year, we have the Taiwanese flag and the Indian flag side by side. The Indian national anthem is sung first, then the Taiwanese national anthem. So it's a tacit base, right? We cannot go headlong into another war without this particular war being over, first and foremost, because we also have a limitation on resources and army personnel.
That's right.
More importantly, Taiwan also has to show us something, right? We also need something for it. I know Taiwan will never take on China for us. Fair enough, it cannot, okay? But at least condemn it. When Galwan happened, do you know the whole world, including our really good friend Russia, just said that it needs to be solved bilaterally, diplomatically. EU also said the same thing. There were just two countries which condemned China. One was the US, maybe because of West keeping interest. One was Japan. No other country said that. So when other countries or regions are not willing to even condemn, why should we get into a war for them? We all talk about values and democracy, etc., right? But is this whole talk about values more important than nationality or national interest? We also want to focus elsewhere on our economic growth. Anyways, China has been attacking us. We are holding ground, spending a lot of, crores and crores of rupees on just stabilizing the border, disengagement and so on. Why should we waste resources, attention, etc. for another country? Why should we not economically grow?
I do agree with you in this part, but there is also psychological warfare part I wanted to come into. See, I do agree that we should not waste our energy, resources on fighting with China or fighting for another cause, which is not our interest. But China loves psychological warfare, right? It loves to hurt or, kind of pinch where it hurts you the most without directly saying so. So where and how do you think India can do it? If not one China policy, how does India then bring it in the fore?
We do quite a lot of it and the Chinese recognize it.
Okay, please use
Just that example of, the flag, two flag. Look, now, if we are flying the two flags together, of course, the government knows, right? If the de facto Taiwanese embassy is holding an event, it, of course, is taking permission from the central government. It's not like our central government does not know of it. Very tacit thing, right? It's not like the Chinese don't know it. They do flare up. When Nancy Pelosi did visit Taiwan, right?
So why don't we visit?
Why don't we visit?
Because you visit Taiwan, right?
I'm just a civilian.
All right, but you have been there, you've been on the ground. So I'm sure there's a lot of support for India. Why maybe one of the Minister of External Affairs state can visit or an independent member of parliament can visit? Why hasn't that taken off?
Again, see, nationally speaking, the moment we go there, it is understood by China that political recognition is being given. See, even for the US, it's different. They flared up even when Nancy Pelosi went, right? It's not even like Joe Biden had gone there and it's Nancy Pelosi, a congresswoman who had gone there. They flared up. Now, let's replace, a congresswoman, US congresswoman, with an Indian politician who is, say, a member of the parliament. How do you think China is going to respond?
It's going to start giving us warnings and
Warnings, maybe attack us more, do things again. So, if there's a conflict we can avoid, why should we not avoid that conflict then? And what will we accomplish by making this political? It's not like, even earlier, during Tsai Ing-wen's time, Meenakshi Lekhi ji had gone there. So it's not like, our politicians don't go there. They do go there, but it's not going to happen at the prime ministerial level. Joe Biden also didn't go. Trump is definitely not going to go, right? So why should we take the lead in this? We have to calculate, where is it serving our interests? Just to do a show, why should we do that? Psychologically, if we have to affect China, our economic growth is affecting China. The fact that we are collaborating economically and technologically with with Taiwan, is affecting China. Otherwise, why are they so angry about Foxconn, right? When we were thinking of releasing the iPhone in the market, you should have seen the Chinese cyberspace. They were trying to, and social media has become a huge platform for forming narratives and, impacting consumer choices and so on. So the narrative was that, and they were basically saying that even before the iPhone was actually released in the Indian markets, the Indian-made iPhone, that Indian iPhones are bursty. Why? And look, the Chinese social media space is completely regulated by the CPC. There's huge surveillance. So unless the Chinese state wants this to go out, this won't be going out in such a humongous manner. So the fact that we are economically progressing pinches them. That is our psychological warfare. We do a lot of other things also. The fact that we are in the Quad affects them.
I'm going to come to Quad now. How does that affect?
How does that? When the Quad initially had come out, China had dismissed it as an ocean fog, which will dissipate with time. But look at today, they call it Asian NATO. Why? There has to be some change. It affects them. Otherwise, how did it change in just a few years from ocean cloth, which will dissipate into Asian NATO? Second thing, since we were talking about psychological warfare, disinformation. Look, in between, Australia had withdrawn from the Quad because of China's pressure. China's very tacit pressure. India never withdrew. But if you look at all the dominant actors, India is the weak link. Why? Why do you think China does not really put out these very aggressive, I would say condescending tirades against the other countries? Not Japan, not US, not Australia, but India. Power differential. Also, culture-wise, India is an inferior country as per their cultural calculations and so on, right? So they do a lot of these things, but maybe it's not our style to engage in this sort of trash, which is why, you don't see our troll army does a lot of other things, but it doesn't engage in this, right? It is not concerted against China in particular, right? I think only after the, I'm going to call it Wuhan virus, because every virus is named after the place that it originates from. So even when the Wuhan virus had happened, initially, when Delta wasn't really here, the narrative still was very, positive towards China. So on. Why? I do not understand this. Maybe it's just our culture, our psychology that we don't really engage. Coming back to the state, it's not like we don't engage in psychological warfare. Again, after Nancy Pelosi's visit, Chinese state media had asked the MA spokesperson to reiterate India's stance on the One China policy. So he just said that, look, our stance is clear and we do not need to reiterate. But it tends to slap in the face without actually slapping. Those are, psychological. There's a Chinese style of psychological warfare and there's an Indian style of psychological warfare. चाटा ऐसे मारो कि आवाज तो आए नहीं, but चोट जरूर लगे.
Got that point. But when that silence is misconstrued by Indians itself, right? We don't understand. We think that India is really the weak link. And there are so many documentaries which compare the military strength of India versus China. And then we go like, agar war hua to, India is going to take the hit. So this does play a negative impact whenever we talk about India versus China. So let me come back to Quad now. Why? Because the general understanding is it was India which insisted that Quad should not be military. It should not be a security alliance. And that's why AUKUS comes into picture. And a lot of Indian media and a lot of Indian academics said that India is missing the bus because of it. Especially, we could have gained a lot, but we did not do so. And with that, Quad kind of lost its main relevance, to be said. The kind of what is it supposed to do? Apart from the UNCLOS and rule-based order, there's nothing that was driving Quad. So in this light, what do you think, or what is the importance of Quad today then?
Again, this is a very dominant perception of the Quad that it's really headed nowhere. But when you see a duck, say on a lake, you see a duck, right? You think that the duck is like really still and it's not moving or anything. But it is. Its legs are moving under the surface, right? Quad, as I'll see it, is doing a lot of things which are really necessary. Why is it not military? Look, the US already has a very military, security-oriented focus within the ASEAN and the larger Indo-Pacific. Whereas China is smart. It understands that countries in today's epoch of history don't really want security guarantees. What they want is economic development. So, which is why they've been pushing out the BRI, right? Most of the projects have not really reached conclusion. It's been more than 10 years now. And they are, riddled with corruption, environmental damage, Chinese laborers actually disrespecting local laws, and so on, wiping out of local countries, languages, cultures, lots of things, right? But countries are still hopeful. If you just look at even within ASEAN, most of these countries have a dispute with China, right? But economically cooperating. Vietnam, for that matter. 4 to 5 years ago, Vietnam was very vocal against China. But in today's date, it is not, right? It's more Philippines right now. How and why has this happened? Because China understands what is it that the countries need. US is, only last year or last to last year has announced certain schemes. Even if you're announcing, it's going to take you 10 to 15 years at least to accomplish. China's BRI came up 11 years ago, right? Some of the things have been accomplished, just about enough to keep up this appearance that it's going to help these countries and so on. US has a security military focus already. Why should Quad do the same thing? Why should we repeat it? Why should we make the same blunder? If you look at what the Quad is focusing on, vaccines, tackling diseases, preventable diseases and so on, immunization, STEM courses, educating the youth, these are the things which the next generation needs.
Basically soft power.
Not just soft power. See, if countries or people get wiped out during things like Wuhan virus, there's no vaccine collaboration, as it was the case when the Wuhan virus first hit us. If we do not prepare, and there is going to, look, China repeats its same things again and again. Another one will happen eventually. I dread that day, of course. But it's going to happen. So these are preparations, right? Again, if the Quad says, oh, we are a military organization and we will protect all the countries, how and why? Illogical first and foremost. So every country's military problem then becomes our military problem. Who is going to support us in our military, when we are trying to protect against China? It's it's very foolish to think that we can stabilize. We are not there yet. We are not the US. If even the US is saying, no, let's not do it militarily, then there has to be a reason, right? Which is why it doesn't make sense. Be prepared. Just to take a leaf out of India's experience with China militarily. We get slapped over and over and over again because we are never prepared. It's always a knee-jerk reaction, right? So now if the Quad has to avoid a knee-jerk reaction, it needs to prepare. It will need vaccine collaboration to prepare. It will need to wipe out, all sorts of these communicable diseases, transferable diseases, and so on. It will need STEM courses. That's why mutually acceptable scholarships and fellowships and so on. It is also projecting to ASEAN countries that, look, China is not the only option. We will give better things, right? India is very good in quick impact projects in a lot of ASEAN countries. What are these quick impact projects? Creating schools, creating, medical facilities, so on. Things which matter to the people, as opposed to China's big announcements, big dam, big roads, which never get completed on time, by the way. And the overhead cost is keep increasing. And the host country suffers actually. Our advantage is quick impact projects. And in the last few years, as opposed to what it was earlier, we have been completing our projects, right? So, which is why let's leverage on the strength that we have. Why should we go for military protection and militarization of the port, which we are not yet capable of? If we were, China won't be attacking us so many times. So, if we do that, it's also a loss of face for us. We are not the US, of course. We are not Japan, definitely technologically supreme. We are not Australia as well. We are India. India has to do two things which it is capable of and is capable of doing brilliantly. So, which is why our understanding is, why should we get into things which the world wants and wants to force us to? We can't do that. Say tomorrow you say, Dr. Patel, tomorrow you come for a lecture on quantum physics. I'll say, no, I am not capable of that. I can do international relations and I'm good at it. I will do that. Rather spending, it might look very good. Wow, Dr. Patel now knows quantum physics as well. It will just look good, but eventually a loss of face for me because I cannot perform. So it's better to do things which we are capable of. As we keep growing, look, a lot of these quad engagements projects also will help our economy grow. The basis of strength, earlier economics was thought as being a part of soft power, Kyohanium 9. But then, as we realize, it's a very important facet of hard power today. So if we can have the economic growth through all our engagements, be it in Quad, be it, quick impact projects in ASEAN and so on, why do we not do it? That's the India will. We are slow. There is no denying that. But slow and steady wins the race.
But aren't we frustrating the other countries like US and UK? And that's why they're going towards Philippines. We have this, the Quad plus ideas floating and the Squad coming in. Just because maybe other countries are getting frustrated with India's look towards vaccine diplomacy or towards education and human-centric approach. It again, from a very realistic perspective, which is what US foreign policy largely is, they really do not give so much of value to these things. And their understanding is either the show of strength, the nuclear submarines in South China Sea, and Philippines being given the best of the air, radars and everything. So aren't they getting frustrated with India's way right now?
If they are our friend, if they are our partner, they will have to understand our strengths and cooperate accordingly, right? We do not expect them to do magical things for us, right? If we expect them to stop funding Pakistan, would they do that? They would not, right? They are also a rational actor. They would behave if, as the buzz is right now. Why were the, Indian illegals sent in handcuffs? Can we demand that? We can't demand that from them. That is their thing. Let them do their thing. We will do our thing. But if we are friends, if we are partners, we'll have to understand. If they are frustrated with us, we are also frustrated with them over a lot of things. But yes, there is something which holds us together. And if the Quad is expanded, it will be better for us. Include South Korea if it wants to. Include ASEAN, why not? It helps us better. But it's just that there are some things which we cannot initiate. We're not the most powerful country in the world. We are not even saying that, we are the leader of the international system. They might be frustrated, but here again, since you mentioned Philippines, if the US's whole approach was so great, why wasn't Vietnam helped 4 to 5 years ago when it was so vocal? When China was completely attacking it, US tried doing the same sorts of things which it's now saying about Philippines. Was it of any use? It was not. The countries have to be made strong from within. That reliance on China has to be reduced. And there needs to be a smarter way. Just being like a bull and charging and defense and okay, great. Show of strength is important. But first we need to have that strength. Second, if we don't have that strength, let's capitalize on the strengths that we actually have. So that's our approach. If our friends are frustrated with us, let them be. They can come and ask us, as they do, and we can explain. And then we go and tell them our frustrations. And then most of the times they don't really act on it because they're more powerful.
Right. Let me now shift the focus and move towards Russia, because that is now the buzz going on. One of the most frequently asked question is Russia still our friend right now, considering they are getting so close to China? But they're always been a friend, right? It's Russia and China. but Russia's presence in Bay of Bengal, Russia's presence in Russia and China's cooperation in the Arctic, China's help coming across during the Ukraine war, shows a different side of this relation. Does that mean it is going to impact India-Russia relations?
How I see this, again, there are no permanent friends or foes in international relations, but Russia has been a time-tested friend to India. But that doesn't mean that it's not a rational actor. When it entered into this no limits partnership with China, why did it do so? It's not like Russia and China don't have problems. Before 2022 and this announcement, there have been huge. Look, Central Asia has been Russia's backyard because part of USSR and so on. It definitely didn't like the fact that China was making inroads into Central Asia. Okay, demographic change in the Far East. There's been so much of Chinese migration in the Far East that in certain cities, Russian language was replaced by Chinese. And the Russians are also, just like the Chinese, are super proud of their language and culture and so on. In fact, Zeeb, I think 10, 15 years ago, one of the local leaders had also said that, there will be one day when your children will be speaking Chinese. It's not like that the Russians don't have a problem with the Chinese. If you look historically also, there was a point of time when the USSR was considering dropping the nuclear bomb on China. There was a Sino-Russian border dispute, and they were seriously considering this. And then the US used it backdoor channels, spoke to the USSR, spoke to the Chinese, and the nuclear crisis got averted. But yes, there was a time. So China-Russia relationship also has had its ups and downs. The most terrible one being that there was a consideration that let's bomb it into smithereens. Right? Russia is smart, right? The only reason why it entered into the no limits partnership is that they have a common enemy in the US or in the West. So again, friends, enemy, Kottayya's theory basically, right? So that's why they did it. And yes, it's economically not as powerful as China is. Militarily, it's a bit more powerful than China is. Russia understands that. God forbid, however, if ever there's a time that Russia has to pick between India and China, and a gun is put to its head, otherwise it's going to play diplomatically. Oh, you please sort out your differences bilaterally and etc. Because it values us as a partner, as a friend. Also, economically, we're buying a lot of oil from them, so their economy is prospering and so on. But the fact also is, and we actually replaced China in the number of oil of its energy imports. Fact is, if the war with the West and with the US is still on, Russia would choose China. Logically, if you think logically, right? It has a bigger foe, the US. It can do without an India because, well, India is neutral, does not really take the US side or Russia's side. Whereas there is a China which is willing to take Russia's side. Who would it go for? If we were in the situation, we'd probably do the same.
So Russia's closeness with Pakistan, is it the gun on Russia's head right now? Why China is doing it? Or do we see that already happening? Or there's sudden changes in Russia's policies, right? Which is threatening to India's interest. Is it China pushing that already, or is it in anticipation that Russia is doing it?
There could be two possible solutions. A, of course, China is, China is the boogeyman or the boogie woman. But then, of course, look, Russia also is, while it has never said it openly, I'm sure it's not pleased with the increasing tilt that India has towards the West, right? So it will also do its own very tacit psychological warfare by turning the heat on from time to time. It knows that in popular perception, Pakistan is the biggest enemy for us. Just popular perception. I think the real enemy is just China. So which is why turn the heat on, right? So that just to keep India on the guard that, look, if your friendship boils over too much, then, well, we know where your weak spot is, So that's, every country is rational, every country would do it. In the public domain, we don't really criticize Russia, etc. But it's not like we don't understand that we will have to shift our reliance away from Russia. If you look at CIPRI data, our arms imports from Russia has reduced. We have started actually Israel was always a partner. We've also started cooperating with the South Koreans, with other ASEAN partners for defense supplies. We also know that eventually Russia is not going to be very stable. We will partner on issue-based things wherever it can benefit us. That's why, I think that's why the terms which India uses in this epoch of history, issue-based partnerships, issue-based friendships, multi-alignment, I think these are excellent to explain what every country is doing with the other.
Right. So I'm going to drag you back to the first question. Cold War. Now we see, of course, multi-alignment and all of that, but there's something called the axis that's also coming up. Some say, if you're looking at the Western media, the axis of evil, axis of resistance, and basically an axis emerging with North Korea, China, Russia, Iran coming together versus the Western alliance. India being on the strategic autonomy, or some say NAM 2.0. So now my question goes back to the same thing. Is this what the Cold War is going to be about, with these axes emerging suddenly?
No, even Samuel Huntington, as lambasted as he is, when he was talking about fault line states and so on, he had mentioned that India is always going to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
You won't be able to really... And look, he wrote it years and years and years ago, right? But that is true even in 2025. Why should we waste our energies in other countries' wars, or other countries' economic growth, or why should we not help ourselves? Most populated country in the world, right? So the West will always use these terms because psychologically this has an impact. Axis of evil. Evil is a value-loaded term. Who makes a country decide what is evil and what is not? All said and done, what the West has done...
Really? Literal villains.
Should be the evil ones, right? If we just look at our colonial masters, really evil ones, right? But they will never be in the axis of evil, right? So these are value-laden terms and just have a psychological sort of impact, and then they get channeled into media and academics forwarded and so on, and very tacitly impact the civil society. Then the civil society will put a pressure on the government, of course, because we are democracies, right? It's a very smart ploy, actually. So we should not get into these value-based judgments. Look, everything is national interest-based. Cold War, it is some sort of a weird configuration of international relations right now. And now Donald Trump is doing a lot of things. Maybe there's a method to the madness, which we will eventually find out. Maybe it will give China more leeway, at least within the WHO. US pulling out. I understand US is correct in the fact that US pays the most. WHO, whereas China has a bigger population, doesn't pay that much. Fair enough. Is that ground enough to pull out of the WHO? If you do, you're not making America great again. Why? Because you give China the free hand to create more viruses, like the Wuhan virus or maybe something deadlier. And viruses don't respect sovereign boundaries. They will eventually go to Americans as well. Staying within the WHO, pushing China to pay more would have been the smarter option. But maybe there's a larger reason to this. It's a whole lot of configuration going on. But I would refrain from calling it a Cold War 2.0 because it's not just ideology based, It's not just values based. There is a lot of economic engagement, a lot of money, which matters. But at the same time, it seems that a lot of things are ideological. So I would call it, the term New World Order has already been used multiple times. This would be the inexplicable New World Order.
Right. Which brings me to the last question. Donald Trump, would his crazy policies bring India and China together, especially on matters of tariff, on matters that he has been really vocal about? Would, at least for the time being, India and China will find it in their interest to align. And already there are indications that in the recent report that has come out, China is willing to have conversations with Philippines, willing to have conversations with India, is ready to, kind of take on a more responsible role, going to the WTO to talk about tariff. Do you see that transition happening because Trump has taken upon himself to be the major disruptor?
No. Why? Because India is more aligned with the US right now. Even if you just look at the things which have happened since the swearing in, right? Immediately after swearing in, Quad, foreign ministers meeting, which in very simple speak is anti-Chinese, right? So I think that's a clear-cut signal. Second, I think Israeli Prime Minister has visited. Next is going to be Indian Prime
Yes,
Minister.
excellent.
So again, it's not China, right? Will be accepted. When Donald Trump talked about these deportations, we said, fair enough, we will take back 18,000 illegals. We didn't contest. We didn't say anything. As opposed to other countries, Mexico included, Colombia, Canada, and so on. And then Donald Trump turned the heat on them. And which is why they caved in, right? India didn't do that. Smartness. And anyways, illegals are illegals, right? More importantly, I think even today, yesterday, there's been a talk between Rajnath Singh ji and the defense minister. We're talking a whole lot of things. This is not really happening with China. See, again, reading signals of Indian diplomacy is very important. On the day that Vikram Misri was in China, on the same day, Prime Minister Modi had a call with Donald Trump. Out of Vikram Misri and Prime Minister Modi, of course, Prime Minister Modi. So we understand where the greater importance lies, right? In any case, India has constantly said that it's just, disengagement that has happened. It's not de-escalation in the military realm. Our EM has been saying that in very, in a lot of different ways that we have to be prepared. Army chief is also saying that. That's not going to happen. Yes, Trump will slap tariffs on us. He's going to slap tariffs on every single country. On China, China is one of the first three countries which he mentioned after taking his oath, after swearing in the realm of tariffs. Yes, of course, Canada, there was Mexico and China. India wasn't there, right? And the tariffs on China are additional 10% over and above what already exists, right? So yes, China will read. Now it will start looking for partnerships. It is high time India realizes that only when China wants to fix its own problems, it will look for partnership. Are we willing to go for such a partnership wherein we are just used? Do we just want to be pawns? Whereas our interests lie more with the US and with the West. Okay, they have, friends fight, friends have issues. But US is not an existential threat. Not under Donald Trump. He's not going to be a savior for India, of course. He wants to make America great again. But to make America great again, India is not the primary threat. Yes, he has said things about BRICS. And he said that, if you want to go for de-dollarization, triangle and so on. But we've already made it very clear, much before he came to power, before he was sworn in, that we are not for de-dollarization. We made it clear multiple times. So I don't think there is anything to worry about. We will get tariffs, but let's see how we can navigate it. We have already said that, I think as of yesterday, we had lifted certain restrictions. We made certain economic adjustments on 30 products which are traded between India and US. We understand it's going to be problematic. But do we want to rely on a China which has forever had a trade deficit with us? Forever. US actually suffers a trade deficit with us. They import much more from us than they actually export to us. So we had a positive trade balance with them. Okay, then be some tweaks with the US. Defense engagement is going, scientific engagement is increasing. So I think, rationally speaking, India needs to do away with its with this attitude that wherein we forget things very easily, which China has done. The weird bit is we don't forget when it's Pakistan, but we forget when it's China. So that rearrangement in perspective, in the way we see things, has to happen. Otherwise, we're just going to keep doing this with China for the next 100 years. China will keep prospering at our benefit.
It's true. Our fascination with Pakistan has come at a cost, and we have really ignored China, especially if I take a look at the number of people who actually know Mandarin or understand China's policy thought process. It's very few and far between. And I think it's time that the academic world, the media, really steps in to understand and analyze China. Anyway, with this, we come to an end to today's podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope all of you out there have had a lovely time listening to this dialogue. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, take care. Bye.